Hello, my name's Andrew Allen. I'm professor of woodwinds at Valley City State University in Valley City, North Dakota. And this is a video to help you in your effort to find a place in the North Dakota All-State Band. Today I'm going to be talking about just a few things associated with the audition materials and try to give you some pointers as you practice and prepare for this very exciting, important event. So, one of the first requirements for the audition is the use of scales. First of all, your B-flat major scale in 2 octaves, and then your full range chromatic scale. So I'm going to play both of those, and then we're going to talk just a bit about each one. First of all, the B-flat major scale. And then your full range chromatic scale. So, probably the most difficult thing for most of you is going to be that low B flat. Starting on the low B flat, getting a beautiful sound in the low B flat, the low B, and the rest of your low range, one that matches the rest of your sound. Now, this involves a lot of very specific things and will take quite a bit of work. And in fact, I actually guide you to another video of mine on improving the saxophone sound that you can hopefully quite easily find through my YouTube page. But I will say that one of the most important things for any full range scale, getting a beautiful sound across the range, is key. That's one of the things that your judges are going to be listening to. They want the same dynamic across the scale. They want the same sound across the scale. They want everything to be fairly uniform and everything to sound pretty much the same as far as your sound itself goes. So one of the most important things about that is keeping your embouchure the same across the registers. Now, a good saxophone embouchure, I always like to say, is pretty easy. So this is my imaginary mouthpiece. You're going to put your top teeth on top of the mouthpiece, and you're going to rest the weight of your head there. It's very important that you have your neck strap pulled up so that the mouthpiece just comes directly into your mouth, and you can have your top teeth on the top of it and just rest your head there. Now, of course, these lips, they just seal in. You're going to have your top lip on top of the mouthpiece, not curled around your top teeth. You're going to have your bottom lip curled very slightly over your bottom teeth. It's just a cushion. Don't think about wrapping it tightly or anything like that. We don't want tightness in our embouchure. And then we're just going to seal in our corners like a drawstring to make sure that everything's sealed in. You're going to use that same embouchure across the entire range of the horn. You're not going to change anything dramatically according to range. So again, if you have any questions about, well, my low notes aren't really coming out, yada, 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 there are some helpful things in my Improving the Saxophone Sound video. One of the other things to think about, especially with the 2-octave B-flat scale, are articulations. So at no point do we want to hear th, 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 any tongue sound or any kind of rough articulations. And with saxophone articulation, I always like to think of the tip of the tongue touching the tip of the reed. Okay? Very close to that anyway. If you're getting any kind of problems, if you're getting any kind of excess noise when you tongue, that's going to be something that judges fairly quickly key in on. Might be a little harder in the low range, but very, very, very diligently work on that. Try to eliminate any excess noise. You may have noticed that I actually flicked my finger starting the B flat. That's an old trick. You get the air going a little bit in the saxophone tube before you start playing. Just excite the air column. It's a little bit easier to start low notes that way. It's a trick, okay? And if you can't play the note beautifully to begin with, that's not going to help a lot. It's only going to help if you get a good sound on that note. So that's one thing to work on very, very, very carefully. One of the biggest problems as far as response in the low range is concerned is a lot of people don't have their mouthpieces quite in the right spot. If you have your mouthpiece pulled out very far, as a general rule, you're going to have problems in the low range. Now, the place where the mouthpiece is varies from saxophone to saxophone, so don't necessarily gauge yours according to mine. But if you're consistently having problems in the low range and your embouchure looks fine and everything else like that, then I would consider taking a serious look at where your mouthpiece is. So again, a little bit more information about things like that on the saxophone sound video that I talked about. So just two other things related to scales. First of all, in the chromatic scale, so it'd be very awkward if we were switching from our regular F fingering to a regular F sharp fingering in either one of those octaves. We get a kind of weird sound. Even if you're pretty good at it, you're still going to get kind of a in-between sound every once in a while. So don't forget that you do have a chromatic fingering for F sharp. You might not be able to see it. There is an extra key over here that you can open up. F to F sharp, F to F sharp. You're going to use your third finger. Again, take a look at a fingering chart just to make sure you know where that is. And you're going to use that on the way up. You're actually going to use the regular fingering back on the way down. Another thing to keep in mind with the chromatic scale and with that B flat scale actually, when you're going from A to B flat, I recommend a very particular fingering called the side B flat. So you're going to finger an A, and then you're going to add this lowest side key in the right hand. One thing you should never do, you should never play a B flat with the first finger of both hands. Never, 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 never. It's very out of tune. Compare the side B flat, which is fairly in tune, to, oh, that's so flat. You don't want to play that. No, don't play it. No, no, never play that. Ever, 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 ever. So, those are some things to think about with your scales. Next, the piece. So you have a required technical etude from the Voxman Advanced Method Volume 1, page 49, number 16. Let me talk about it in just a moment after I've played it. So, this is a technical etude. However, something to keep in mind from the get-go. Just because it's fast, just because there's a lot of stuff going on in your fingers, doesn't mean that it has to be frantic, doesn't mean that it has to be all about strength and blowing and blah, blah, blah. Fast can also be very graceful, can also be very elegant. At the beginning of the etude, you'll actually see tempo de valse. And some of you might know this already, but just in case, tempo of a waltz. Okay, so a waltz is a very graceful dance. So this piece needs to be very graceful as a result. Some other things to keep in mind. So we have this back and forth dichotomy of notes underneath a legato marking and staccato notes. So one of the things your judges are going to be listening for, first of all, they're going to be listening for right notes, all at the same tempo, which should also be set of your scale. Everything should be very even, very mellifluous, no finger mistakes. That's a given. The next thing they're going to be listening for is this back and forth between these legato markings and these staccato markings. So you need to make a very, very clear distinction between the two. And again, you don't want any excess sound with your tongue. So if you have problems with that, there are several exercises that you can do. We can talk about that. You can email me and we can get that straightened out. But that's something to think about. One of the other huge things to think about is we also have this dichotomy between loud and soft throughout this piece. So we have forte and we have piano. And once in the first section, which we come back to, you do have the decrescendo down to piano. So those two dynamics need to be very clear. They don't need to sound the same. Okay, we have forte, we have piano. not only are they very different dynamics, they're very different tone colors. If no one's ever talked to you about that, tone color, it's this chance for us to differentiate our sound. And not only are dynamics the difference between loud and soft, they're also the difference between some other differences of sound. So again, if you have any questions about that, don't hesitate to contact me. We can talk about that further. But there needs to be a big difference between your louds and softs throughout this piece. Something else to consider, of course, is the roadmap. We don't want to get mixed up on the roadmap. Again, that's a very basic thing. So, we have our scales down. We have our prepared etude down. What's next? The etude of your own choice, or the piece of your own choice. So, you could approach this a number of different ways. But one of my first recommendations would be the selection that's been chosen for you has a lot of stuff going on. Okay? There is a lot of technicality to this piece. So in your own solo, I would suggest that you choose something that shows off your ability to play beautifully and lovely with a lovely sound. Something that you can show off your musicality, playing a beautiful melody. So you have some options as far as this is concerned. Of course, it is of your own choice, but some good resources to go looking for a piece like this. You could stick with the advanced method, both volumes 1 and 2. There are several good examples of beautiful melodies that you could choose from in these books. Some other etude books that I would suggest that might be good places to look for. 27 Melodious and Rhythmical Etudes by J.L. Small. It's a very standard etude book for the saxophone. Be able to find some very nice exercises for any level player, especially if you're nearing the end of the advanced method, if you've worked out of that some. Another great resource as far as etude books goes are the Selected Studies, edited by Jaime Waxman. Very, very, very nice there. Or the 48 Famous Studies by Furling. All really standard saxophone etude books that I think everyone should know about, and you can find some nice music in them. Now, if you're looking for something more oriented towards a piece, there are a couple really great collections that I would point you to first. One of those, Solos for the Alto Saxophone Player by Larry Teal, or if you're a tenor player, Solos for the Tenor Saxophone Player, edited by Larry Teal. They have a lot of very nice pieces that you could use. And again, if you're a bari player, don't worry. You can buy the alto book, and of course it's still in the right key, so it will work for you. And if anybody plays a little bit soprano too, of course the tenor book is still in the right key, so that'll work for you as well. Those can keep you busy for a long time, have a lot of really quality literature in them. Now past that, if you want a few more pieces to keep you going, I would recommend, first of all, Chanson à Passepied by Janine Rueff, R-U-E-F-F. If you need that again, contact me. A couple other pieces that might be good would be the Sonata No. 3 by George Friedrich Handel, arranged by Sigurd Rascher, R-A-S-C-H-E-R, or the Sonata by Henry Eccles, also arranged by Sigurd Rascher. And past that, please contact a saxophone teacher because we can point you in the right direction past those pieces. So those are some things to consider, and again, with any contrasting, beautiful, lyrical etude, you want to have beautiful sound. You want to be playing lines very connectedly when it calls for it, have lots of contrast when it calls for it, play your dynamics as spot on as possible with lots of contrast. And of course you want to be in tune. Now you might say, well, I'm just playing by myself. I don't have an accompanist. I don't need to play in tune. Yeah, you do. Because a saxophone can very much be out of tune with itself. So that's something to consider. Again, if you're interested in that, we can talk more about that. So the last thing that's left as far as your audition goes is a bit of sight reading. So you might be a little scared of the sight reading. You might have a little bit of trepidation. Even really advanced musicians can sometimes be a little bit scared of that. My advice to you would be going with a plan. You need to have a specific way of approaching a piece when you sight read it. No matter what the piece is, a specific way of going about it. So when I receive a piece to sight read, even if it's something that I'm going to do in rehearsal, something I'm going to do with a professional group, I still approach it the same way. First of all, I take a look at the tempo. Is it slow? Is it fast? What's going on here? And very closely related to that, I take a look at the time signature. Okay, I can know how slow or fast it is, but that only makes sense when I know what gets the beat, how many beats there are in a bar. So those are the first two things I take a look at. Okay, what do the note values mean in this particular scenario? After that, I'm going to take a look at the key signature. I'm going to figure out, okay, what is going to be flat, what is going to be sharp through here, and I try to start making those connections in my mind. After that, I take a look at dynamics and expression, because those are so important. No, you can't gloss over those when you're sight reading. That's the difference between people who do very well and people who do kind of mediocre, paying attention to the important work of musicianship. And then lastly, if I have any time left, and again, you can scan all of this in a matter of 15-20 seconds. If I have any time left, I start looking for accidentals. I start looking for any odd technical challenges I might have. What I do not do, I do not start playing through the piece with my fingers before. No, that's not a very effective use of your time. So you need to have a stepwise method like that. And hopefully you'll do very well with sight reading. Now that's just a basic step through some of the things that you'll encounter in your audition for Allstate here in North Dakota. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. You can find my contact information on VCSU's music department website. And I wish all of you the best of luck as you approach this audition. And I hope that you learn a lot from this process.